Imagine being ripped from your life in an instant, vanishing without a trace. Your face plastered on missing person posters, your family left in agony, the world moving on while you're trapped in a nightmare. Cleveland, Ohio, a city of bustling streets, working-class neighborhoods, and families who lived simple lives. But within this city, for over a decade, inside an ordinary-looking two-story house at 2207 Seymour Avenue, concealed a horrifying secret. 3 young women were enduring a nightmare no one could imagine. Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus were trapped inside, enduring unspeakable abuse at the hands of Ariel Castro, a man no one suspected to be a monster. Their families thought they were dead. The world had moved on. But inside 2207 Seymour Avenue, time had stopped. This is the horrifying true story of the Cleveland kidnappings, where Ariel Castro held 3 young women captive for more than 10 years and how they finally escaped. Stay with us, because this story is more shocking than any Hollywood thriller. It all began in Cleveland, Ohio. The year was 2002. Michelle Knight, a 21-year-old woman with dreams of becoming a chef, she had already lived a difficult life. She was a young mother, fighting to get custody of her 2-year-old son, Joey. Life had been hard. She had grown up in a troubled home, dealing with abuse and neglect. She had even run away as a teenager and lived on the streets for a while. But despite the hardships, she loved her son and was determined to fight and bring him back home. That day, she was supposed to attend a court hearing regarding Joey's custody, but what she didn't know was that she would never make it to that hearing. She was walking alone, trying to find her way, frustrated and lost. As she wandered the streets of Cleveland, she heard a familiar voice. Ariel Castro. Ariel Castro was born on July 10, 1960, in Puerto Rico. His early life was far from stable. His parents divorced when he was young. He and his mother moved to the mainland USA, settling in Cleveland, Ohio. He was raised in a large family, but his childhood was filled with abuse and dysfunction. Castro later claimed that he was physically beaten as a child and that his mother was strict and controlling. His father stayed behind in Puerto Rico, and he rarely saw him. As he got older, Castro became withdrawn, but had a charming side when he wanted to. He loved music and played bass guitar in several local Latino bands. He was social and well-known in the Cleveland, Puerto Rican community, but behind the friendly exterior, he had a dark and violent side. During high school, he met Grimilda Figueroa, the woman who would later become his common-law wife and the mother of his children. At first, their relationship seemed normal, but Castro's violent tendencies soon surfaced. Ariel Castro and Grimilda moved into 2207 Seymour Avenue in Cleveland in the early 1990s. It didn't take long for the abuse to begin. He physically beat Grimilda regularly. He broke her ribs, dislocated her shoulder, and cracked her skull. He controlled every part of her life, refusing to let her leave the house alone. At one point, he locked her in the basement, a chilling foreshadowing of what he would later do to his kidnapping victims. Eventually, Grimilda escaped with their 4 children, Angie Gregg, his oldest daughter.
That my father's actions are not a reflection of everyone in the family. They're definitely not a reflection of myself or my children.
We don't have Munster in our blood.
You never want to talk to your dad again?
No. I have no problem cutting him out of my life. I never want to see him again.
Emily Castro, his second daughter, was convicted of attempted murder in 2008 after she brutally attacked her 11-month-old daughter with a knife. Miraculously, the child survived, but Emily was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the crime. Though their crimes were unrelated, the fact that both father and daughter committed acts of violence is an eerie and unsettling coincidence. Emily's actions may have stemmed from mental health struggles or personal turmoil, while Ariel's were the result of years of calculated abuse and control. Still, their stories raise questions about the influence of family dynamics, environment, and deeper psychological factors in shaping such tragic outcomes. Arlene Castro, Anthony Castro. Grimilda filed domestic abuse charges, but the police never followed through with an investigation. Castro kept the house and continued his life as if nothing had happened. In the years leading up to his kidnappings, Ariel Castro lived a disturbingly normal life. He worked as a school bus driver for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. He played bass guitar in Latin bands and was a regular in the local Puerto Rican music scene. He was friendly with his neighbors, even attending barbecues and helping people with small repairs. But behind closed doors, he was preparing his house for something truly horrific. Castro spent years turning his house into a prison. He reinforced doors and windows, making it impossible to escape. He soundproofed certain rooms so no one could hear screams. He installed heavy locks, chains, and a secret basement dungeon. When people visited, he kept them away from certain areas of the house. His own family members had no idea what he was hiding, but behind closed doors, he was something far more sinister. And in 2002, he was finally ready to put his monstrous plan into action. Castro pulled up in his dirty maroon vehicle and offered her a ride. Michelle recognized him. He was the father of one of her friends. She had been inside his house before, and he seemed friendly enough. Michelle hesitated. She was already late. She didn't have money for a bus, and he was someone she thought she could trust. She got into the van. At first, everything seemed normal. Castro drove through the streets, making small talk, but suddenly, instead of heading toward the courthouse, he turned onto Seymour Avenue and pulled into his driveway. Michelle started to panic, telling him that she needs to get to her hearing. Castro smiled and lied and said, "Come inside for a second. My daughter's inside. She'd love to see you." Michelle hesitated, but she thought about his daughter, who had always been nice to her. She followed him inside, but the moment Michelle stepped into 2207 Seymour Avenue, she felt something was wrong. The house was dark and smelled terrible, like urine, sweat, and filth. She heard dogs barking and chains rattling. Before she could react, Castro slammed the door shut and locked it. She turned around. He was blocking the door, standing between her and freedom. Her heart started pounding. She knew she had made a terrible mistake. Before she could scream, Castro grabbed her and forced her into an upstairs bedroom. Inside, she saw a tangled set of extension cords and heavy chains. She started begging for him to let her go, but he ignored her. Instead, he grabbed an extension cord and wrapped it tightly around her wrists, tying them behind her back. She screamed, kicking and trying to fight, but Castro was stronger. He shoved a sock in her mouth and covered it with duct tape, silencing her completely. Then he threw her down on the bed, chained her to a metal pole, and left her in complete darkness. Michelle was trapped. At first, she thought someone would come looking for her. Her family, the police, someone would notice she was missing. But as the hours passed and no one came, her hope started to fade. She had no idea that she would not see freedom again for over 10 years. She became his first experiment in control. He was cruelest to her, possibly because she was the oldest and he feared she would fight back the hardest. From the first day, she was dragged into the dark, cold basement. Heavy chains were fastened around her neck and attached to a pole. She was gagged with duct tape, left alone in the dark for days, and this is when her daily life started to become a cycle of torment.
After almost 8 months with no shower, I was pretty gross. My white skin looked brown. I had smudges of dried blood, dirt, and pee all over me. My legs were so hairy that they looked like a man's, and I never got used to the way I smelled. It was so bad sometimes that it made me gag. You saw yourself in the mirror for the first time. What did you see? What was the image you saw?
I didn't see me. There were bugs that ate my skin.
Yeah, that would just bite and eat away at you when you were there.
I would tell him, think about your own kids. And would you want somebody to do that to them?
She lost track of time in the darkness, unable to tell day from night. Castro often deprived her of food for days, forcing her to beg. She endured constant physical and sexual abuse. She became pregnant 5 times, but Castro starved her, beat her, and punched her stomach until she miscarried. She was the first and only captive for a year, completely alone, until Amanda arrived. Almost a year later, another young woman would suffer the same fate. Amanda Berry was just 16 years old when she was kidnapped. She was a high school student who worked part-time at a Burger King in Cleveland. She was fun-loving and had a close-knit family, especially with her mother, Luana Miller. They spoke constantly, and Amanda was excited because the next day was her 17th birthday. April 21st, 2003 was supposed to be just another normal day. She had finished her shift at Burger King and was walking home. She had even called her sister from the restaurant's payphone to say she'd be home soon. She never made it. As Amanda walked down Lorraine Avenue, a familiar vehicle slowed down beside her. It was Ariel Castro's maroon van. She recognized him. He was the father of one of her classmates. His daughter, Ariel Castro, had been Amanda's friend at school. "Do you need a ride home?" he asked.
A couple minutes later, the van pulls up and he says, "Do you need a ride?"
Amanda hesitated. She was close to home, but she was tired from work. Then she asked, "Is Arlene home?" Castro lied and said, "Yeah, come on. She's at the house. She'll be so happy to see you." Feeling safe, Amanda got into the van. At first, the ride felt normal. Castro talked casually, acting friendly, but then he didn't take the usual route toward Amanda's house. Instead, he drove down Seymour Avenue and pulled into his driveway. Amanda started feeling uneasy. She asked again, "Is Arlene home?" Castro smiled. "She's inside. Come on in." Amanda hesitated, but since she knew Castro's daughter, she figured it must be okay. She followed him through the front door. The moment Amanda stepped inside 2207 Seymour Avenue, she felt something was wrong. The house was dark, and the air smelled horrible, like urine, sweat, and rot. Castro led her to the same prison Michelle had been trapped in for nearly a year. Then, suddenly, he locked the door behind her. Amanda turned around in shock. Before she could react, Castro grabbed her wrist and forced her into a tiny back upstairs bedroom. Unlike Michelle, she was not taken to the basement. Her heart started racing. She asked him, "What is he doing?" with panic creeping into her voice. That's when he changed. He shoved her onto the bed and pinned her down. She screamed and fought as hard as she could, but he was too strong. Within seconds, he had tied her wrists together with duct tape and stuffed a sock into her mouth. Then he wrapped a motorcycle helmet around her head. Tight, suffocating, and dark. She was completely trapped.
Get to the house, you immediately know that he's not going to let you out.
Yes.
Amanda lay tied up in the room, struggling to breathe under the helmet. She could hear his footsteps outside, pacing. The minutes stretched into hours. At one point, he came back into the room and whispered, "You're not going home," to her. Her blood ran cold. Then he left again, and she cried herself to sleep, knowing her life had just changed forever. Over the next few days, Amanda begged for her life. She told him that her family was looking for her, that her mother was going to call the police. But Castro laughed. He forced her to watch the news, where reporters talked about her being missing. She saw her mother, Luana Miller, crying on television, begging for Amanda to come home. Castro leaned in and whispered to her, "They think you ran away. No one is coming for you."
That was the only way we knew how they looked, what had changed within a year, to know that they were still fighting for you.
We did everything together. When she came up missing, I lost a piece of me, you know. We were so close. She's my best friend, and it was hard.
Amanda felt her hope shatter. At first, he pretended to be kind, bringing her food, talking to her, but the facade quickly crumbled. Like Michelle before her, Amanda was kept in chains. She was chained to a radiator, only allowed to move a few feet. She was given barely any food, sometimes just a piece of bread. She was left alone in the darkness for days at a time, her clothes taken away, left to shiver in a locked room. At night, Castro would come in and abuse her. She prayed for rescue, but the days turned into weeks, then months.
But within the first week, I was just sitting in a dark room watching this small black and white TV, and
Amanda and Michelle were two strangers whose lives became tragically connected inside the dark, filthy walls of Ariel Castro's house. Amanda had no idea that another girl was already in the house. At first, Castro kept them apart. He didn't want them talking. He wanted them to feel isolated and powerless. For the first few days, Amanda heard strange noises, chains rattling, quiet sobs, footsteps outside her door. She didn't know it yet, but Michelle had already been in the house for almost a year. Then, one day, Castro finally let them meet. One day, Castro opened Amanda's door and dragged her into another room. Inside, she saw a girl sitting on a dirty mattress. She looked frail and weak, with bruises on her arms and a heavy chain wrapped around her ankles. Amanda stared at her and they started talking. Amanda's heart sank. She had secretly hoped she was the only one. She had prayed that this nightmare was just hers, that no one else was suffering. But now, looking at Michelle, she realized the horrible truth. She wasn't Castro's first victim, and that meant she wouldn't be his last. At first, they barely spoke. They were scared of Castro. If he caught them talking too much, he punished them. They were both broken in different ways. Michelle had already endured a year of torture, and Amanda was still in shock from her kidnapping. They had no privacy. Castro watched them constantly and controlled when they could eat, sleep, or even breathe freely. But over time, they became each other's only source of comfort. Michelle, despite all her pain, tried to comfort Amanda, telling her, "We're going to make it out of here. We just have to survive." And Amanda, who was still adjusting to this horrific new life, held on to those words. They didn't know it yet, but their sisterhood would help them survive the next decade.
I think the more we cried and showed him our pain and our sorrow, he got energy from that. It helped him. So we kind of learned. Yeah, we kind of learned, right? To just don't cry, don't show him your pain, don't show him you're mad, even though sometimes
you're hurting, so he won't laugh from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
3 years into her captivity, Amanda became pregnant. At first, she didn't believe it was real, but as the months passed, her stomach grew, and Castro became strangely excited. On Christmas Day 2006, Amanda gave birth, right there in the house. There were no doctors, no hospital, just Michelle Knight acting as a midwife. Castro warned Michelle, "If this baby dies, you die." After a terrifying labor, the baby survived. Amanda held her daughter, Jocelyn, and for the first time in years, she had something to live for.
I really didn't even know I was going into labor. I just had labor pains all day, but I had no idea what it was. Eventually, I had to use the bathroom, and I heard something pop, and I didn't know what it was. But then he's like, "Oh, well, I think your water broke." So he takes me upstairs into my bedroom, and he brings out this baby pool. Well, he had gotten Michelle to come in and help me deliver the baby.
Jocelyn became the light in the darkness. Raising a child in captivity was terrifying. Jocelyn was never chained. Castro treated her like a normal child. She grew up thinking the house was normal. Amanda had to pretend everything was okay just to keep her baby safe.
We'd wake up in the morning. We would have breakfast. We would pretend walk to school. I tried to make it as real as possible for her and tell her, "Okay, I love you, have a good day." And then I would become her teacher.
1 year later, another girl would go missing. Gina DeJesus, just 14 years old, she was the youngest, a child who barely understood what was happening to her. She was a happy, friendly, and outgoing 8th grader at Wilbur Wright Middle School in Cleveland. She loved hanging out with her best friend, Ariel Castro, who, tragically, was Ariel Castro's own daughter.
I would have to say I'm really disappointed, embarrassed, just mainly devastated about this whole situation. I would like to say I'm absolutely so sorry. I really want to see you, Gina, and I want you to meet my kids. I'm so sorry for everything.
That Friday, April 2nd, 2004, started like any other day. Gina and Arlene went to school together, laughing, talking about boys, and making weekend plans. But one simple decision that afternoon would change Gina's life forever. After school, Gina and Arlene planned to have a sleepover. They walked home together, talking and joking. But when Arlene asked her mom for permission, her mother said no.
She used the payphone to call her mom to ask her if she could come to my house. And her mom said no. She went her other way, and I went the other way.
So disappointed, they said goodbye and went their separate ways. Gina kept walking home alone, never knowing that someone was watching her. As Gina walked along Lorraine Avenue, a maroon-colored van pulled up next to her. Inside was Arlene's father. She knew him well. He was like family. She had been in his house before. He rolled down the window and acted friendly. He asked her if she had seen Arlene. Gina, trusting him, leaned into the car window and said she had just walked home. Then Castro asked her for help to find her. Gina, wanting to be helpful, got into the van, never realizing she had just made the worst mistake of her life. The ride seemed normal, but then Castro didn't turn toward Arlene's house. Instead, he headed toward Seymour Avenue. Gina started feeling nervous. She asked him, "Where are we going?" Castro smiled and told her that he just needs to stop by his house first. She didn't want to be rude, so she stayed quiet.
We find her, and I was like, yes, and then he didn't turn around. We ended up going to his house.
Then, as soon as he pulled into the driveway, he locked the van doors. Her stomach dropped. Something was very, very wrong. When Gina stepped into 2207 Seymour Avenue, she immediately felt scared. The house was dark and smelled horrible. Like usual, she turned to leave, but Castro blocked the door. Her heart started pounding and asked to go home while trying to stay calm. Castro smiled and grabbed her wrist. She started to scream, but before she could fight back, he shoved her into the basement. Inside the basement, Gina struggled and begged him to let her go. But Castro overpowered her. He tied her up with extension cords. He taped her wrists and mouth shut. He chained her to a pole, just like he did with Michelle and Amanda. She was terrified. At just 14 years old, she had no idea what was happening or why. She cried out for her parents, but no one came. For 2 years, Gina was kept separate from Amanda and Michelle. She was left in total darkness for hours, sometimes days. She was only fed scraps of food, just enough to survive. She had no idea there were 2 other girls upstairs. But then one day, Castro brought her out of the basement, and she saw Amanda Berry. Gina gasped and said, "You're Amanda Berry." Amanda looked just as shocked. She had seen Gina's missing person posters all over the news. But before they could speak, Castro threw Gina into another bedroom, this time with Michelle. The first thing Gina saw was a frail, bruised woman sitting on the floor. Michelle, who had been there the longest, looked at Gina with sad eyes. She asked gently about her name, and Gina replied to her while whispering in fear. Michelle's face filled with sorrow. She knew what this meant. Castro had a new prisoner. She looked at Gina and said, "He's never going to let us go." Gina, Amanda, and Michelle spent the next decade trapped together. They were often kept separate, but could sometimes hear each other cry. Castro controlled everything, when they ate, when they could use the bathroom, even when they could move. They were chained at night, forced to sleep sitting up. They were forbidden from speaking unless spoken to. They had to ask permission for everything, even to breathe. Castro loved to play mind games. He would leave doors unlocked to test them. If they tried to escape, he would beat them. He would fake kindness, giving them gifts before violently taking them away. He forced them to celebrate holidays, making them watch him eat a full meal while they starved. Then one day, Jocelyn, Amanda's daughter, noticed the chains on Amanda's ankles and asked, "Mommy, why are the doors locked?" That single question planted the seed of escape. Gina held on to hope. She prayed every day that her family was still looking for her, and they were.
We took advantage because we knew we had to keep her alive. We knew we had to keep her out there so people would not forget.
Gina's disappearance devastated her family. Unlike Michelle, who had been largely forgotten by authorities, Gina's case gained media attention. Her family organized search parties, clinging to hope. But hope was all they had. No one suspected that all 3 girls were trapped in the same house, just miles from home. For over a decade, these women endured unimaginable torment. Castro manipulated them, using psychological torture to break their spirits. He would alternate between cruelty and moments of twisted kindness, sometimes bringing them fast food or allowing them to watch TV. Then, on one fateful day in 2013, everything changed. Castro had grown careless, leaving the front door partially unlocked. Amanda saw her chance. With Jocelyn beside her, she pushed against the door, screaming for help. Charles Ramsey, a neighbor, heard the cries. He rushed over and helped Amanda break free.
I'm at McDonald's. I come outside, I see this girl going nuts, trying to get out of her house. So I go on the porch, and she says, help me get out. I've been in here a long time. How the door is, it's so much that a body can't fit through, only your hand. So we kick the bottom, and she comes out with the little girl, and she says, call 911. My name is Amanda Berry.
Together, they kicked open the door. Amanda ran outside for the first time in 10 years, holding Jocelyn's hand. She borrowed a phone and called 911. Amanda made a frantic call that sent shockwaves across the nation.
You need police, fire, or ambulance?
I need police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years, and I'm here. I'm free now.
Okay, stay there with those neighbors. Talk to the police when they get there.
Okay.
Thank you. And
Steven, I'm Amanda Berry. I've been on the news for the last 10 years.
Within minutes, police swarmed the house. They found Michelle and Gina alive, shackled in separate rooms. It was over. After a decade, they were finally free. Ariel Castro was arrested that same day. Investigators found chains, padlocks, and horrifying evidence of the years of torment he had inflicted. In court, he showed no remorse, claiming he was merely sick. He blamed the women for getting in his car. He claimed he was a good father to Jocelyn. He called himself a victim of sexual addiction, but his crimes spoke for themselves.
I am truly sorry to the Jason's family, Michelle, and Amanda. You guys know all the harmony that went on in that home. What I'm trying to get is that these people are trying to paint me as a monster, and I'm not a monster. I'm sick. My sexual problems have been so bad on my mind that I'm impulsive.
He was sentenced to life in prison, plus 1,000 years. The jury didn't believe him.
What do you think of the sentence your father got? Did he get what he deserved?
I think it's the best possible sentence. I think that if he really can't control his impulses and he really doesn't have any value for human life, the way this case is shown, then behind bars is where he belongs for the rest of his life.
A monster, a hateful, I hope he rots in that jail. I don't even want them to take his life like that. I want him to suffer in that jail.
But Castro would not serve his full sentence. Just 1 month later, he was found dead in his cell, having taken his own life, a coward's escape. As for the survivors, they rebuilt their lives. They found the strength to move forward. Michelle Knight, now Lily Rose Lee, became an advocate for missing persons, wrote a book called Finding Me, married and found happiness. Amanda Berry became a journalist, helping search for missing people, and raises Jocelyn, who is now a teenager. Gina DeJesus co-founded the Cleveland Missing Organization, dedicated her life to helping other kidnapped children return home.
I was there for 10 years, and I always wondered, when would I come home?
You understand, baby?
And if it wasn't for you, I don't know if I would still be home. So thank you.
You don't have to worry about nothing. I told you, I got you.
Their story is one of unimaginable horror, but also of survival. For 10 years, they were trapped in darkness, but they never lost hope. This story is a testament to resilience, the power of hope, and the incredible strength of those who refuse to be forgotten. Never stop looking, never stop fighting, because miracles do happen.